Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Degrassi video, and this time it'll be an audio video. Well, the audio. It is the 10 Degrassi episodes that basically define the Rick Murray storyline. It was ranked from 1 to 10 from the Degrassi Reddit community and all that. So, practically, what I originally did was well, there were 6 episodes, and the episodes that mainly had something to do with the Rick Murray storyline and aftermath were practically placed in it and ranked from 1 to 6 by the Reddit community. And 7 to 10 are like the Rick situation, but the backup of storylines. So here we go from 10 to 1. At number 10 is the episode Moonlight Desires. It has mostly to do with the backup storyline, like the subplot. I don't know if Moonlight Desires was the one that Marco was bypassed for donating blood because he's gay and all that. I wanted to raise a stink, but Hazel Heckles didn't do anything about it. But the fact of the matter was the subplot was when Spinner desperately tries to go back to Degrassi after being expelled by Hazel Heckles. He's told that he can come back in a sense and do summer school courses to catch up with some of his courses, but not all of it. His year is practically done for. He can only partially catch up. Spinner is not too pleased with this and actually goes with Jay to burn the yearbooks and burn the school for burning him, if you will. However, Jay, in a strange thing, sees the yearbooks and sees how Spinner is prominently in the yearbooks somehow. And realizes that this is not the way Spinner can get his friends back. So he basically tells Spinner not to burn the school. And Spinner takes the summer school stuff from Hazel Heckles and kind of gets a second chance in a sense. It wouldn't be till the start of season 5 when he's allowed to come back to the school in full capacity, and Hazel Heckles warns him that one false step, you're out the door. And Spinner makes it his goal to get his friends back and redeem himself, which it works at the end of season 5. So that's one episode. At number 9 on the list is Bark at the Moon, the famous episode that saw 3 major storylines. Now, they kind of did have something to do with the Rick Murray situation, all 3. Like Manny and Spinner, because Spinner, for some strange reason, broke away from Paige and went towards Manny, while Paige had to be working to pay off Spinner's car. Paige ends up wanting to go to the dance with Mr. Olander, of course, the student teacher, and it does have something to do with it in a sense because of her not trusting men, especially Rick. And the third plot is when Radich gets reassigned to another school in the wake of screwing up Degrassi. So they do give Radich a practical send-off, unlike some Black Hole characters, they give him a send-off in a sense. Of course, the real story was that Dan Woods was producing Chop Cut Rebuild, and it was going off so graciously that he couldn't really transfer back from California to Toronto just for a few scenes. So they basically allowed him to be reassigned. I still think that Dan Woods probably did not want to be, like, made a villain and, all that. But what choice did he have? Number 8 is the Kissing Bed episode. Well, Islands in the Stream. I think this was when Paige and Spinner really have their problems. And even though Paige tries to earn money while working the movie computer with Alex to pay Spinner's car back, Spinner basically is a jerk and all that. Of course, the subplot does have to do with the Rick Murray situation because it involves Rick. As Emma practically now hangs out with the Quiz Bowl team of Rick, Toby, and Heather St. Clair, which is strange because a few episodes prior, Emma made fun of Heather, but I guess she was basically outcast by the school and all that. But yeah, Toby and Rick get paired up, and then they both do a kissing bed for some role-playing dice. Toby easily wins because a loser is better than a psycho. Toby feels bad and pays Darcy in her first appearance in Degrassi $5 to kiss Rick. Unfortunately, Spinner and Jay see this and pick on Toby, which starts the thing about them going after Toby. And yeah, it was rumored that Jay was actually supposed to be Darcy's brother, but I don't think it would have worked out. At number 7 is Voices Carrie. Yes, I know the main plot line was Craig dealing with bipolar stuff with Ashley and Ashley's dad's wedding and all that. It does kind of have something to do with the Rick situation because seeing Jimmy's sprawled body may have led Craig to some problems and all that. But, that wasn't it. However, Voices Carrie is big. Well, the subplot is big because Liberty and JT were playing on a Dracula, an offshoot play of Dracula. Unfortunately, Radish doesn't think it's a good idea with how, it's too soon after Rick's death. Liberty says that does not follow the source material, and Radish wants a campy musical to make sure Degrassi's portrayed in a positive light. Like, I get the idea. Like, he's just trying to get his school back in good graces, but the fact of the matter is he let his problems go. And Liberty and JT take him to task, and he basically throws them into Monday detention, which actually gets Liberty and JT to get their feelings towards each other. So, of all that. And of course, back at the moon is when Radish gets the boot. At number 6 is Secret. This is the episode in which we learn that Emma is not fine after the aftermath of Time Stand Still and all that. There's a few episodes between Time Stand Still and Secret that Emma seems to be okay and not that bad, but unfortunately reality set. Emma's not doing well in school. Perito basically said the grace period's over. Like, Frank. Like, she's got problems with the shooting. People are walking on eggshells around her, especially Spike and Snake. Emma's in the play, out of the play, in the play, out of the play, and she's so zombified that she doesn't clue into Jay's advances towards her. And she basically goes down the ravine, makes herself feel better about herself, but it comes at a cost, especially with the rumors that Alex and Amy are both out of the play thanks to Jay and a gonorrhea attack, and everyone assumes Emma has gonorrhea and makes her an outcast, even in the school play. Emma then gives Jay the special, "You gave me a social disease" line, and Jay said, "I went with you because you're pure. I don't feel that pure right now." Emma then realizes she may have screwed up with the Rick situation. After all, she did do the Orange Ribbon campaign, and maybe she's just upset with herself. Some people actually said that the gonorrhea was punishment for Emma's role, but I doubt that highly. Number 5 is Eye of the Tiger. And in Eye of the Tiger, Jimmy comes back to the school 3 months after the rehabbing for his injury and all that. And Spinner still has the rack of guilt. And especially with Jimmy coming back to school, he feels very terrible and all that. Jimmy then gets a token award from the basketball team and then basically decides to tell Spinner that his career's over. There's like pieces of me have fallen. Spinner says you'll be fine and all that, and Jimmy admits that maybe this was punishment for harassing Rick. And Spinner decides to tell Jimmy about the fact that he and Jay tricked Rick into believing Jimmy was behind it, but didn't know Rick had a gun. Unfortunately, the school decides to shun Spinner. He's told not to come anywhere near Jimmy, but Spinner says, "I have to make things right." Jay doesn't make things better, and he basically said that, Spinner couldn't keep his mouth shut. Jimmy deserved to know the truth. So they both crash Jimmy's welcoming party drunk, and Jimmy appears in front of Spinner's car when he tries to drive away and yells at Spinner, saying that a true friend would not have allowed his best friend to get shot and all that. And he makes a good point that basically Spinner wasn't Jimmy's friend, especially Spinner telling Jimmy about the pain and feathers the first time, like in Time Stand Still Part 2, before the guilt. And then, of course, he says that you only did it to alleviate your guilt. Well, dude, Spinner had to, because if it came out to the police, he would have been dead. He basically decides to tell Hatzalakos the truth about everything, pins Jay, rightfully so. He gets expelled and doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. The only problem with this was when Hatzalakos said, "Your actions have put a boy in a grave and one in a wheelchair." The wheelchair, yes. But blaming Spitter for Rick's death? That doesn't make sense. It wasn't that way. And what if Rick didn't get shot by Sean? So basically, yeah, that was a big blooper on Hasenuckle's part. And number 4 is Back in Black. This was the aftermath episode after what happened in Time Stand Still. Sean lavishes being a hero. Raditch opens up the school to grief counselors because we need to get back as fast as possible. Sean is told to express his true feelings by Sylvie and Snake, but he doesn't. Emma bursts into the drama in Snake's class and hugs Sean for saving her life. And Sean decides to go back to Wasaga Beach because that nosy reporter Rachel decided to interview Sean's parents. She just wanted that story so badly. So Sean takes Ellie, Emma, and Jay to Wasaga to deal with his parents, and also a piece of his past with Tyler, the boy he deafened, who basically said that Sean was a hit-and-run artist. But I think Sean's parents basically heard about it and then got him to his brother in Toronto before anything else happened. Sean then falls off a jet ski. Tyler saves his life. Sean apologizes to Emma about everything the previous year, and then decides to go home and stay in Wasaga and deal with his PTSD, to deal with everything because he may have killed Rick. And I think he was guilty, and he was worried that the cops were going to go after him, but the cops would have gone after him right off the bat. A, and B, Rick's the psycho. And Sean did try to calm Rick down. In the subplot, Toby gets berated by JT and Danny about being Rick's friend. Toby makes a monologue towards Maddie, who basically chides JT, saying that if you didn't want to go with Webster, that's her name for Danny, then Toby would not have been easy prey for Rick to be his best friend. JT realizes it after Maddie says, "You can't be the better man." So JT and Manny go to the visitation and confront Toby, who has to deal with Rick's mother and all that. And basically, JT apologizes for everything. At number 3 is Mercy Streets. This was the episode in which Rick comes back. After season 4 had a 2-parter, the main plot was to deal with Paige's rape case, which unfortunately doesn't get resolved. Rick comes back to Degrassi, no strings attached as it seems, as Paige and her crew basically are sickened by everything. Emma then walks in and talks and asks what about this problem, and they said Rick's the psycho who put Terry McGregor in a coma. And then, stupidly, we got a deleted scene that Raj tries to explain his actions to Marco and Alex, who became student council presidents and vice president, respectively, in the last episode before this. But the fact of the matter was that his hands were tied, in a sense, but Marco and Alex don't believe him. The fact of the matter is that Emma tries to get involved by preventing Rick from moving in the hallway. Raditch chides her for it and basically says that this is not one of your stupid crusades. Are you crazy, Raditch? So Emma decides to make it a stupid crusade about orange ribbons about domestic violence, with Paige's help to silently get Rick out without breaking any rules. It's also worth noting that Emma, alongside, being chided by Raditch, may have did the Orange Ribbon campaign, especially to do with domestic violence, and because she's a closet girl, and also to do with the fact that with Manny and Liberty rightfully shunning her for what she was going to do with Chris, the previous episode, that she wanted to be in a friend group. Emma then realizes her Orange Ribbon campaign is just causing violence and all of that, especially with the students feeling that the staff are not doing anything about it, mob justice, and all that. Emma then prevents Rick from being beaten up outside the dot, which gets her shunned by everybody. She tries to get Rick to leave the school, but Rick is not buying it one bit. At number 2 is Don't Dream It's Over, the key episode in season 3 before this whole mess in season 4. So, of course, Rick leaves roses at Terry's locker, proves to be a decent boyfriend, but is psychologically and physically abusive towards her, especially thinking that Terry is going to gravitate towards Jimmy more so than him. Rick is upset, but it ruins Terry's theater thing, and then, shoves her against the wall. He was upset that she was listening to Paige and Hazel, saying that they're toxic. Unfortunately, well, fortunately for them, it breaks them up. However, because of a road trip with Paige, Spinner, Hazel, and Jimmy, Terry doesn't want to be the fifth wheel, so she tries to bring someone and falls in love with Rick, who thinks that Rick's changed, but nope. A leopard doesn't change his spots. And Terry tries to convince Rick to go back to the road trip, but Rick is upset that Terry is listening to Paige and all that, and then gets so angry he makes Terry's head hit a rock, and blood comes out. Fortunately for Terry, Spinner and Paige find out things. Get Terry to the hospital, and she's in a coma. Terry's dad chides Spinner and Paige for not saying anything about Rick and his abusive qualities to him. However, he does change his mind, saying that he should never have blasted them. Spinner and Paige basically blame each other and themselves for Rick hurting Terry, and Rick sits outside the school in his mom's car, and Spinner wants to tear Rick a new one for not visiting Terry in the hospital. That gets shooed away. Of course, it's notable that I thought that he would be expelled. I thought that Raj had basically found out about this and expelled him. But no, he was basically taken out of school by his parents. He probably cried crocodile tears, and basically that's how he got away with everything. And number one is, without a doubt, you knew this was going to be number one. It is Time Stands Still. The episode that went there. So, Time Stands Still starts innocently enough with Rick being harassed by Jimmy and Spinner, who put him in a dumpster. The next day, he decides to spray paint everyone's cars that have tormented him, practically retaliating for the first time because, nothing's happening. Unfortunately, that gets Spinner, Jay, and Alex, who are the true bullies. Well, Jimmy kind of is too, but basically they want to go after him, Rick, but they can't because Sean says, you present this evidence to Radich, he's going to want to know what's going on, and so they can't incriminate themselves. In the meantime, Rick and Jimmy bump into each other in the hallways. A snake stops them and asks Jimmy about the three longest rivers and who's won the most NBA titles. Jimmy gets those questions right, and it now is on the Quiz Bowl team with Rick, Emma, and Toby because Heather Sinclair, the famous unseen character, got mono. And maybe she was with Craig because Craig was sick too. Speaking of Craig was too sick to go to school the first day, and then bumps into Sydney, Joey's ex, and wants Sydney's help to try to deal with Joey's house because Joey's trying to sell his house for a good price because he's losing money. Joey's not too pleased with Craig interfering in his actions, and that's when Craig decides to go to school on that fateful day to spurn Joey. Joey realizes that Craig was just trying to help, and Caitlin buys the house, which was shocking enough. But basically, any subplot was going to suffer. So, anyway, Rick's not too happy with Jimmy joining forces. He doesn't go to Snake. He goes to Radich because he thinks Radich is his ally. Unfortunately, Radich is not his ally and basically tells Rick to do a better job fighting, being good friends. Like, he does talk about Jimmy, but he doesn't say the magic words about bullying. If he did say that, or he presented proof to Radich, Radich would have had to take him at face value like he always did. He was a concrete thinker. So that's what happens. Rick's mom basically tells Toby that Rick says that this Quiz Bowl team will run the school and all that, and wanted Rick to go to a new school, but Rick says don't worry about it. Rick saves the team from embarrassment by answering a question that ties it and forces a tiebreaker, and in the intermission, Jay and Spinner talk to Jimmy and Rick. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Jimmy switches sides and goes towards Rick when Toby gets hurt thanks to Spinner and Jay hurting him, and then Rick telling him that now that they got another target, that's Toby. And Jimmy actually feels sorry for him. So anyway, once Jimmy leaves the bathroom, Spinner and Jay plant false information in Rick's head and then do the painted feathers thanks to Alex, and Rick is embarrassed. Emma tries to help him out, but Rick becomes creepy towards her, kisses her with the painted feathers on, and Emma says that she pitied him. So that's part one. Time Stands Still part two. It starts when Rick has the gun and doesn't know what to do and decides to go back to school with his uniform, with his outfit with the painted feathers on. Approaches Toby, but Toby tries to calm Rick down. Raj wants answers, and Rick decides to go towards Paige in the cafeteria, but Paige thinks that everything was sickening, and Rick realizes that Paige was not behind this and realizes his mistake and finally apologizes for what he did to Terry. He puts the gun back in his locker and decides to clean himself in the school bathroom, but unbeknownst to him, things would change as Spinner would brag about this whole thing to Jimmy, which is the stupidest thing Spinner could have done. And then in another deleted scene, Spinner clucks at Rick, and then Raj wants to talk to Spinner after school for a talk and asks Rick to leave, and Spinner and Snake takes issue with Raj and all that, and Raj gives the line, "This is not daycare, making friends is not part of the curriculum." I would say preschool, but anyway, that's when Spinner says Raj knows, and Jay says, "About Jimmy? Yeah, I'm surprised." And then Spinner plays along with Jay's bullshit and all that. Of course, if you look at the deleted scene, you'll figure that, well, Spinner said that line because he figured that now that Raj wants to talk to him at 3:30. But we don't see the scene, and, well, of course, Jimmy might narc on him. Unfortunately, though, well, they notice Rick's in the stall, and then Rick takes his gun, shoots Jimmy. He does have a moment of conscience, because if he did, he would not have turned his head. If he didn't, he would not have turned his head, and he would not have blindly shot at Jimmy. He would have shot Jimmy in the head right there. Boom. Game, set, match. Emma, Sean, and Toby inexplicably walk towards Rick. Rick wants Emma to pay for spreading his advances. Sean tries to calm Rick down like a good police officer does, but Rick says it's too late. He just shot somebody. He goes after Emma, and there's a gun fight, and a gunshot gets made. We don't know what happens. So then basically the aftermath happens. Kate Kerwin seeing Jimmy stretchered out. Craig dealing with Jimmy's sprawled body. Blame being passed around all over the place. Snake and Raj having a massive blow-off in the media room. Toby being asked why his friend did something like that. Rachel, the nosy reporter, being a bitch towards Toby. And then basically Snake admits his guilt and said we should have saw the warning signs. And that tribute, like that, the final scenes, just gut-wrenching and all that. I'm all alone and all that. All those pictures, you have to cry. You really have to cry. So anyway, those are the top 10 episodes to do with the Rick Murray storyline, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.